We've been told there's $2 or $3 trillion on the sideline in real estate waiting to pounce. And it's all going to happen at the same time. So the question is, if that's all going to happen, how do you be on the forefront of that? Where is that money going to go? And how do you take advantage of that? An example of being curious and asking questions and being okay with asking questions, even if you don't really know what you're talking about, trying to understand where other people are going and try to find an alternative route that takes everybody in the same place, but try to get there first. Look to see where you can be first in line rather than following the herd.
Imagine being able to see opportunities where others see only obstacles, to find value in places where conventional wisdom says none exist. Today, we have the pleasure of diving into the mind of someone who has mastered this art, Matthew J. Gorelik. As founder, chairman, and CEO of Township Capital, Matthew has built a pioneering real estate firm that turns overlooked market dislocations into high-quality investment opportunities. His approach? Challenging the status quo and pushing the envelope in collaboration with elite developers and institutional managers. Today, we're going to explore his journey, his leadership philosophies, and his recently published article in Authority Magazine. Welcome to the Care to Lead podcast, where we delve into the stories and insights of leaders who are reshaping their fields. Welcome, Matthew. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Matthew identifies risk, ventures into emerging asset classes, and navigates this ever-evolving landscape of commercial real estate. And I would like to begin by unpacking just how you've challenged conventional wisdom.
So what we really did was, through my previous life of working at very large institutions, organically, Township Capital was founded with the thought of being in the wealth management business and looking at the landscape of how people invest their money and the inability for people to make direct investments into certain asset classes and having to go through these very large institutions. And what happened is that through doing business through the lending side and wealth management side of one of my previous firms, JP Morgan, we found that there was a large dislocation in how these elite developers that garnered institutional commitments from a JP Morgan, how they actually capitalized their deals. And generally, through a joint venture with a large institution, the large institution puts up 90% of the capital, and these developers need to put up 10% of the capital. And they're capital constrained with that 10% as they grow their business. And so Township Capital was born with the thought of building a bridge that connected wealthy people directly to those developers or sponsors that had that institutional backing.
So you shared a story where you couldn't figure out why someone wasn't taking advantage of what you were offering here. And in order to figure that out, you had to follow your curiosity, which is a leadership thing that I'm always telling leaders. Follow your curiosity, ask more questions, listen. And it sounds like you did just that to realize that even though it's 10%, that person did not have that 10%.
And it's exactly correct. And what happened is that it was sort of this hidden notion that the large institutions only put up 90% max. I mean, that's it. And so when we went back to ask them why they didn't put up more money and say, this developer doesn't have the 10%. When they want to grow their business and these large institutions really want to put out large amounts of capital, that 10% equates to a lot of money. And what we found was that there was a disconnect between these large institutions saying we're maxed out at 90%, and these developers saying, we don't have that 10%. We may have it for one deal, but we don't have it for 10 different deals. And so through curiosity, as you said, we were able to go into the minds of these developers and sort of say, you're so institutional, but your GP, which is them, on that 10% was not institutional. And they sort of were piecemealing it together through friends and family, through other resources. And it was a very part of their business that was tough for them. And so what we designed a program that we institutionalized their GP and became a one-stop shop for them to go to capitalize their deals through our platform.
So is this unique to you? Do other people do it now? Have people followed your lead, or
There are
is it still pretty
absolutely
unique?
people that have followed. And listen, there's a lot of business for everybody. It's a very, very big landscape. I think what we do especially well is we create these long-term partnerships and friendships with these developers because there's a lot on their plate. And we're really just a financier. We're a company that is giving them money in a passive fashion because they're the experts. And we're just honored and thrilled that they would allow us into the general partnership of their deals, which is normally meant for friends and family. So by meeting them and meeting their families and building long-term relationships, we sort of have a stronghold on the space. And we've been very successful at building those relationships through student housing, multifamily, industrial, and senior housing.
Can you share with us why you decided that student housing was a good way to go when everyone was saying COVID changed it and it'll be a new normal moving forward?
Sure. And it was a scary time. There was a lot of uncertainty, and most of the experts were saying that student housing was not a place to be. But we found that these large developers and some very large institutions, obviously, really like that space because especially with large universities, when you have a large university of 35 to 40,000 enrollment, big football programs, big basketball programs, community-based, there was a need for that student and community approach. And having a son that was going to a large university that was miserable at home during the beginning of COVID, they all wanted to be at school. And the large universities also have parents that have saved up for their student, for their child to go to school. So those people have already saved the money. So the idea of not when I was going to school, which is one parent would sign for 5 different, students, and you'd have kids moving in and out and one person was responsible. How it's done now is it's per bed and it's a furnished apartment. And so, when people have saved their money for their child, like we had saved for mine, it was already, the money was going to be available. So you have an easy way of getting students to go and parents to pay for it.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that building more housing is key to addressing affordability issues. So what role do you see Township Capital playing in this area?
So we are actually building the largest multifamily housing project in Hialeah, Florida right now. And the idea behind that is because Miami is growing so much, the affordability of Miami is not there anymore. And for the people that work at all the hotels, the people that service these very large condominium projects, hotels, whatever that may be, they need to live somewhere. And just outside of Miami, really in Miami-Dade County, but just outside of the city of Miami, lies this really incredible community called Hialeah that really is either American immigrants that have come here, small houses, and we purchased an entire city block of housing over the course of COVID. And then we are 3/4 of the way built. It's 559 units and the first of its kind, bringing really affordable housing to a community that really needs it, because the kids that grow up in those houses go off to either college or work, and they have no place to come back to their community because they don't want to live with their parents and they can't buy a house. And so having the ability to rent a brand new, all the amenities, a gym, a swimming pool, and everything else that goes with it with retail is a very attractive thing for us, rather than following the mainstream of the developers in high-end condominiums in Florida. We looked past that and said, where is everybody going to live that are servicing those people in Miami? And that's what we're building now. And in fact, recently we bought the block across the street from this housing project, and we're building another 600 units there starting this December.
Wow, that's awesome. I like the why behind that answer. It's really special.
Our idea is always to see what everybody's doing. There's a herd mentality out there, and to sort of be curious on asking questions and how do we not follow the herd, but take advantage of the herd. And so by finding a way to build our own community inside of those other communities, sort of it drives people to where they need to be able to live close by, and they need to be able to be near the train station to get to work. And so building those is it's fun to do, and it's fun to watch.
Awesome. I'd like to turn this conversation a bit more personal, if you don't mind, I'd like our audience to learn a little bit more about Matthew, the man and the leader. So let's begin with what keeps you up at night. In the article, you mentioned some things about negativity, but what else keeps you up at night?
Well, right now, the real estate market has been keeping everybody up at night. It's a very difficult time. We're going into our 10th year. Of course, I've been through market cycles, but through the company, we haven't seen a market cycle like this. So what keeps me up at night is the strain on the developers that we do business with. Not necessarily the strain on the assets, but the strain on the developers. There was a time when pricing was going up for lumber and steel and everything else. And they're in the middle of construction and they're stressed out. And so when they get stressed out, we get stressed out because we want to help them. We want to be able to help them with their business. So I think the real estate market as a whole is not in the horrible shape that people can make it out to be, depending on what you own. But it's a scary time right now with interest rates being the way that they are for new development. And when you actually have no development in real estate, there's going to be a lack of housing in the United States. It's inevitable. So what keeps me up at night in terms of business is our partners having the ability to continue their projects and the ability to have their own lives too, and not be so capital constrained and nervous about where the world is in general right now.
And how many employees are in your company?
So we outsource a lot of different like fund administration and accounting and other things. We have 10 employees in-house at Township Capital, but we like to keep things lean. Overhead is really tough. And so we find the best in class institutional type of accounting firms, auditors, bookkeeping, legal, everything, and sort of outsource all of that because it can be outsourced. We just hired somebody from KKR, worked at KKR and Blackstone, John Spiricchio, and he is going to be a huge part of the firm right now as we continue to grow. We think that there's a huge opportunity coming in to new development in the real estate space, and we're looking forward to that. We're sort of building up the team right now with more senior people, knowing that we want to be prepared when the real estate market does come back and it starts flourishing again. We're probably 2 years into this cycle. I don't know how long it's going to be till we start coming out, but we're probably closer to coming out of it than we're going into it. So we're looking forward to that and building up the team so we're prepared for it when it comes.
And how do you describe your, let's call it, leadership philosophy?
I think it's very different. I'm very different now than I was when I was in the wealth management business. The wealth management business is a very different business, and working for a much larger institution is tough. I think I lean on a lot of people. My brother, Christopher, who worked in senior management in those large institutions, has joined me about 3 years ago, helping me with that. And he's been a critical part of the puzzle, as I'm really more in sales and building up relationships and raising money. My skill as a real leader has grown over the past 10 years. I'm much more of a team player. When you're in the wealth management business, it's you against everybody. And you may have people that are with you, but it's not much of a team. Right now, I lean on the team, lean on John, who just started here, and let them build their own team within the company in accounting and all of our business and finance relationships, letting our sales guys build their own team. Whereas I was way more sort of micromanaging everything. I'm able now, and with my brother's help, to sort of like stand back and look at everything and look at the skyline and see things more clearly, and know that, that however I can help somebody, especially the younger men and women, grow, it's fun to watch them grow and help them grow, and then let them do their own thing so they can make their own mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and be better people. And it's a work in progress. It's hard. It's hard when it's your company and everything rests on your shoulders to give up some control like that. But now that we've gotten into our 10th year, I really am getting better and better at it.
It's funny. That's one of the things I run into because I work with everyone I personally work with is in the C-suite and a lot of founders. And that's one of the hardest things, especially when you've built something from the ground up and you get to a certain point where letting go of it is actually doing your company more of a service than you trying to have your hands in everything. Because when your hands are in everything, you can't be at this 30,000 foot strategic place that you need to be. And that's a really hard mindset change, especially for founders. I think CEOs in corporate who have kind of come up through the ranks or have been gradually doing that from the director level to the VP level to the EVP level. They've learned to let that go. They've learned how to manage that nuance. Founders, it's a little more challenging.
It's exactly correct. And it was challenging to me because I sort of was thrown in the fire. I had this idea that I thought would be great. We started building it. So this is my baby. I mean, I know what it was like. And now we're starting to see what this baby's looking like as more of a grown up as we continue to grow. But having my hands on everything is very difficult. But you can't scale. You can't get bigger and you can't get better unless you actually release that. And over seeing how difficult it's been in the real estate market has been a great lesson for me to be able to be higher up looking at the landscape rather than being down in the trenches, micromanaging everything, because we have really talented people. And if you micromanage them, they're not happy and they can't grow either. And so having the business grow means you have to give them the reins and let them sort of run on their own. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
It is hard. It's also, I think the other thing that leaders miss is that leadership itself is a job. So when you are leading a company, you have two full-time jobs. You have your day job of making your organization run, and you have your job as a leader, which is developing the team and growing the people and creating your succession plan. That's a whole different set of skills than the skills that built your company to start with.
You're absolutely right. It's two completely different jobs. And it takes time to get comfortable with the second job. I know how to build the business. I know how to build the relationships. I know how to do all of that. I know it. And I can tell you, if somebody came to us with a new investment, I could tell you in 10 seconds whether we're going to do it or not. I know what it looks like. On the other side, leadership and being a mentor and not being so critical, especially with the younger generation, they're not like, I was when I was growing up. So it is a way of understanding them, not fighting all of that, and understanding what their needs are and how they view the world is also something that you have to really listen to a lot. I do a lot more listening than talking these days, trying to make sure that I understand, because everybody's got a different sort of way that they do things and everybody has a different point of view. And the only way to find out who somebody really is by listening. So I rather than on the other side of my job, which is very much hands-on, talking, figuring it out, I'm sitting back and listening a lot more on the leadership side.
Absolutely. And I think other thing that I want to mention is listening itself is a skill. It's really, one of the exercises I do with senior executive teams is I'll have them talk to one another for like 3 minutes. And the person talking just has to keep talking. And the person listening isn't allowed to respond because you're thinking of the next thing you want to say. And you're thinking about the next question you want to ask. And you're thinking. And when you're just not allowed, maybe 3 minutes is long. It's maybe more a minute and a half. I have them do it. But when you're not allowed to respond, it is amazing how you realize how much you would have interrupted if you were allowed to do it. And you're really not listening.
And listen, you're the expert in that. You're 100% right. And I can tell you from experience, I'm a talker. Okay. And it's like when somebody's saying something, you really are. But it's really disrespectful. What I found is like, because the other person on the other side that's speaking is like, is he only waiting till I'm not finished with my thought, or I am finished with it, so he can give me his thought, or is he actually listening? And especially when you're talking to investors or you're talking to, new partnerships that we're trying to create, the listening side is so important. And trying to teach myself, which I've been doing, and I feel like I'm getting better at it, but I'm just not saying anything. And it's hard, but you get so much more out of the conversation by listening rather than speaking. And I agree with your sentiment exactly. And it's funny that you said that because the people that you work with probably have the same characteristics. A lot of them do. And so that's one of the biggest things is, that's a great example of a test. When somebody's speaking for a minute and a half or let alone 3 minutes and you're not saying anything, because you can really think to yourself, why would I interrupt that? How many times would I interrupted that person rather than listening to them finish their thought? And there might be something I could really get out of that thought rather than waiting to speak. And so, yes, listening is critical in what I do.
And I also, it's great for leaders to have these listening skills. I wish all salespeople would understand the skill of listening and the art of listening, because the problems, we're so anxious to solve problems. We are so anxious to get in there and tell them what we can do, whether it's a job interview or talking to a new client for a real estate deal or a medical pharmaceutical salesperson. We're so anxious to sell them how we can solve their problems that we fail to hear the problem because we don't listen. And it's there. You just have to keep asking questions. And 90% of the time, what they're telling you isn't the problem. You don't know until you keep asking more questions. So it's a skill that as a leader is critical.
Yeah, you're right. And being in sales most of my career, to go to the other side, I certainly wasn't good at it when we started this. I actually look at people now having a conversation and I try to notice if they're actually listening or they're actually, not even my conversations, but other people's conversations. Are they listening or are they just waiting to react? And the conversations I've been having, especially over the last year or two, have been better and better, understanding the needs and wants of our partners, of the people that are on the outside, our accounting firm, our legal team, everybody as a whole. By listening, I think, I've learned so much more by not just reacting with solving a problem. I can fix that. And interrupting. And I've had people test me on it saying, can I finish my thought? So I know that it's not perfect, but I'm trying to get better at it. And listening is a huge part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Matthew, what's the biggest struggle that you've had in your career and how did you overcome it?
What's the biggest struggle of my career? There are so many. I think learning from your mistakes. I think that really acknowledging. I think probably humility and not letting your ego get in the way. Because I think early in my career, I think I probably had a pretty big ego. I probably still do now, but in a different way. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. I'm proud of what we do and what we stand for and the people that are here. I think learning from the mistakes rather than talking about all of the accomplishments that we've had. I think I start off the conversations with the things that we have not done well and the things that the investments that we probably shouldn't have done and why we shouldn't have done them and what we've learned from them, rather than just starting off saying everything's amazing, everything, which is the old me, but really talking about what the reality is. Building a business and investing other people's money is a big deal, and it's got to be taken very seriously, and things don't always go as planned. And I think learning from the mistakes that we've made and then being transparent and conveying the message when it's not going well is far greater than trying to sort of push that under the rug and pretend it's not there. And I think that that's a big part of who we are now, is sort of leading with the mistakes that we've made and what we've done to improve them so they don't happen again.
So I'm curious in what you just said, that when you said that you can start off and talk to somebody about what went wrong and what you've learned. Do you find, or have you found, that if you're talking to a new client and you're honestly transparent, maybe about a past mistake or a lesson that you've learned by making a bad investment, do you find that builds trust because you're being authentic and vulnerable as opposed to acting as though you're perfect, which everyone knows isn't real?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I've actually never put that much thought into it. It most likely is. I just feel much more comfortable talking about the business. Certainly, there have been asset classes like student housing and multifamily and other things, and where we've been and how we position ourselves that have been really positive. But the real question with, a sophisticated investor or any investor is, what can go wrong? And all everybody talks about is what can go right. When I talk about our business, I find an individual investor does not have a better way to invest in commercial real estate than through us. Now it's my company and I believe that, but I just believe that we've built a better way for wealthy people to invest in commercial real estate that just they've never had access to in the past. But having said that, it doesn't mean just because you're doing that, it doesn't mean everything goes right all the time. It sounds great in theory, and it isn't great in theory. But when you apply it, there are going to be mistakes along the way. And rather than talking about all the accomplishments and patting ourselves on the back and doing that, going the opposite route and talking to people about the things that have definitely did not work and we would never do again is far greater to me, because I always want our partners, our investors, whoever they are, to understand who we really are and what we've done to implement strategies when things don't go our way, which is inevitable. It's going to happen again, and we're going to learn from more mistakes. But the only way to do it is to try, you're trying your best at the same time, but at least there's an understanding that, we're not saying everything is going perfect all the time.
Well, I hire executives a lot. I'm called into organizations to interview, senior executives. And 100% of the time, I will choose an executive who admits that they've made mistakes and they've learned from them than one who just says, "Oh no, everything's been great. I'm the great." And they're not. Like they're lying. And if they're going to lie to you in an interview, or if you're going to lie to a new client when you're setting them up, how can I trust you moving forward? So it's really critical that people understand the importance of that authenticity that you're talking about, and that vulnerability, and just being and showing up as the person you really are, because that builds so much trust and it shows who you really are.
Yeah. And I think, again, sort of organically, it happened here where we had a few investors like, I don't want to talk to you because you're going to make everything sound like butterflies and rainbows. And it's like, it's not, it can't be. So who can I speak to over there? And that was when I sort of took a step back and said, you know what, I don't want them thinking like, because it's not true. And I do, but I am like that. I happen to be a pretty positive person, but that doesn't mean that you can't be understanding of when things don't go well. And people really do like that. And I think that was sort of a turning point in leadership ability and with investors, with the company growing, sort of talking about that and being transparent about what goes wrong in a company is okay. It's not bad. It happens. Everything can't be perfect. But when you're sort of conveying that, I think you are building a trust factor in your relationships.
Matthew, can you tell us something fun about yourself, fun fact that other people might be surprised to learn?
I'm pretty funny. I'm told I'm pretty funny. I really do enjoy going out, introducing my wife, my family to our partner's family or my friends, and going out and having a lot of fun. I mean, one part about the job and the business that I created, which is we get to invest with these world-class developers that have all these institutional backings. And then we get to sort of sit back and watch it all happen and be the investor. We're not hands-on. We're not telling people how to build, what to do. That's their expertise. So there's a lot that creates a lot of time for fun too. And so, going out with everybody in the office and friends and doing fun things is a big part of the business, because we know that we've invested the best we can with these great developers. And, when we invest with them, that's when the hard part starts for them. But our work is sort of over at that point. And so if that answers the question, I think that having fun is like, it's fun.
There you go. Matthew, we've covered a lot today about your innovative approaches, leadership philosophy, and the impactful work that you're doing at Township Capital. Looking ahead, what is one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring leaders who want to make a significant impact in their industries and communities?
I would say to really look at what everybody's doing in whatever field you are, and then look at a different way of doing it and not necessarily following everybody. I worked at very large institutions, and the herd mentality is great out there. We've been told there's $2 or $3 trillion on the sideline in real estate waiting to pounce. And it's all going to happen at the same time. So the question is, if that's all going to happen, how do you be on the forefront of that? Where is that money going to go? And how do you take advantage of that? An example of being curious and asking questions and being okay with asking questions, even if you don't really know what you're talking about, trying to understand, where other people are going and try to find an alternative route that takes everybody in the same place, but try to get there first. Look to see where you can be first in line rather than following the herd.
Where could our listeners find your company? Where would they connect with you?
My email address and our website at townshipinc.com. And anybody can always get a hold of me just through our township website.
The links will be on in the show notes, but right. I just wanted to know, do you prefer them to get a hold of you via LinkedIn or email?
I think email is great. I'll answer emails and I'll do that. I enjoy meeting new people. That's part of our business. And I enjoy younger people trying to figure out, what we're doing and how we're doing it. We're not secretive. We're fully transparent on what we do and how we do it. We think we're better than others at what we do. We've done it longer. And so we're proud of what we've done, and I'm happy to share it with anybody.
Thank you, Matthew, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's been inspiring to hear about your journey and the innovative work you've been doing at Township Capital. Your commitment to challenging conventional wisdom and fostering collaboration and positivity, it's really commendable. So for our listeners, remember that making a significant impact starts with daring to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Keep pushing the envelope and focusing on what you can control to create a positive ripple effect in your own spheres of influence. Thank you all for tuning in today. If you found value, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform as well. Until next time, remember that leaders who care to lead. Have a great day.